to introduce.
Thank you, Lascan Corlin. My question to the Minister is to ask you about the risks posed to women by the increase in waiting times of up to 20 weeks or more to receive cervical check screening results, the failure also to transfer all samples to slides within the 6-week required time, and the colposcopy waiting lists now being over 1 year in some areas, and if you'll make a statement on the matter, Minister.
Minister.
Thank you, Lascan Corlin. I want to thank Deputy Chambers for the question. The delay in receiving smear test results, which has arisen as a result of both out-of-cycle smears and an increased uptake generally, is a priority concern for me, for my department and for the HSE. I want to assure the Deputy that the HSE is working to source additional capacity, notwithstanding global challenges with cytology capacity and resources, and is also working closely and actively with the laboratories in maximising their own capacity to deal with the demand. It is important to be clear that this will take some time to resolve. However, I do think, in relation to your very direct question about the risks posed to women, I do think we should hear, I suppose, from some of the medical voices in relation to this. And I do note the comments of Dr. Mary Short, the Director of Women's Health at the Irish College of General Practitioners, where she did say that there shouldn't be undue concern about the delay. And I say that not to in any way minimise the challenge, which is genuinely there, but to try and provide some reassurance to women, because Dr. Short said the smear test is not a diagnostic test. It's only to look for precancerous cells, which can be treated in a colposcopy clinic, and the time lag between precancerous cells and cancer can be over 20 years. So she went on to say that there shouldn't be undue concern about the delay. In regard to the transfer of smear test samples, which I think is the second part of the Deputy's question, I have received confirmation from the HSE that since the end of July, this is happening in the vast majority of cases. From April to October, there was a 0.29% rate of expired samples and vials, and this is very similar to the same period last year in 2017, when it was a 0.25%. There are, though, a small number of cases where the vial used to contain the sample can expire, or where a sample may be insufficient. And in such cases, a woman and her GP are advised by letter of the need for a repeat smear test after 3 months. I can also reassure the Deputy in relation to colposcopy waiting times. While clinics have experienced a surge in activity due to increased demand, in October 89% of women referred to colposcopy who are classified as having high-grade abnormal cells received appointments within 4 weeks. This is just below the national target of 90%. Similarly, 92% of those who had low-grade cells were seen within 8 weeks, which is exceeding the target of 90%. And in relation to the question, Cervical Check has advised me that it's unaware of any woman waiting a year for an appropriate referral to colposcopy.
1 minute.
Minister, thank you for your response, and I just want to deal with a couple of aspects to that. First of all, it's up to 20 weeks of a wait to get your screening result back. Many of these women were part of the cervical check disaster, or I suppose issue that arose, and many of these women are having a repeat smear because they're worried. And Minister, they're worried because they think that their screening may have not been done correctly previously, or that their cancer may have been missed. Minister, you made a political promise that women could have access to these additional smear tests. You didn't resource that promise fully or properly, and now the wait has gone from 5 or 6 weeks, which was the normal wait time, to sometimes in excess of 20 weeks. So for those women that are waiting, that are concerned, that are worried, they're now having to wait a considerable amount of time longer to get the reassurance that you, Minister, have promised them. And I have spoken to some of these women that are waiting on those results. Minister, on top of that, if you do get a smear result that is concerning or that is abnormal, you're then referred to a colposcopy clinic. We don't have enough histologists to actually examine the biopsies, so there's a backlog there. It's then up to an 18-month wait to actually see a gynaecologist or to have further treatment. So, Minister, I think you have a problem that's brewing here that is only going to get worse. And can you please outline to the House what additional resources you'll have for this and when we'll have them?
Minister to respond.
Thanks, Deputy Chambers. So I think it's important to remember why I took the decision, which I think was widely supported in this House in relation to offering people a repeat smear test. And that was because one of the #1 queries coming in on the helpline to Cervical Check was women saying, I've had my smear and I'd actually like another one. It's also important to say I didn't offer it without a GP consultation. So the GP had to feel that as part of the reassurance process, the woman would benefit from it. I do want to assure the Deputy that it's not a resourcing issue in terms of a financial resource. Whatever resource is required financially will indeed be provided, and Budget 2019 made allocations for such resourcing. It is a capacity issue, and there are conversations going on as we speak now between the HSE, between Damien McCallion as the Acting National Director of Cervical Check, and the laboratories to see what additional capacity can be put in place. So I am optimistic that we will have additional capacity to reduce the time. What I am saying to people, based on the medical advice available to me, whilst this weight is absolutely undesirable, there's no doubt about that, particularly for women who are understandably concerned after all of the attention in relation to this issue. It's not necessarily dangerous and poses a very low risk to women, is the medical advice given to me, and I need to say that as a reassurance to women. I do also need to make the point very briefly that the large majority of women who you talk about being referred to colposcopy clinics are being referred to in a speedy manner. So 89% of women who were referred to colposcopy who were classified as having high-grade abnormal cells received their appointments within 4 weeks. 92% who had low-grade cells within 8 weeks, which is actually above the national target. So I accept there's a challenge here. It's one we're working our way through, but it was a necessary step to try and reassure women.
No one is suggesting that it wasn't a good thing to do to offer the additional smears, but to not resource them properly, to not have the capacity there to deal with it. The GP system is already overwhelmed. The wait has gone from 6 weeks to 20. Even if you can get your colposcopy appointment between 4 and 8 weeks, you're still waiting 20 to get the smear result back. So actually the wait to get the biopsy done is far longer. When the biopsy is done, you need a histologist to actually look at the sample. We don't have enough histologists to actually examine those samples. So again, the waiting time for results for colposcopy are increasing. And even after all of that, to try and get to see a consultant to get treatment. Remember, Minister, the big scandal around cervical check was mainly around disclosure and not telling people about their missed smears. What we have now brewing, Minister, is the possibility that somebody waiting a significant amount of time longer to get results back from a smear could find themselves waiting much longer to get a colposcopy, much longer to have their biopsy looked at, and far greater time wait to get to see a consultant. All of that does pose a risk to women, even if it's to a small number of women. It doesn't matter if it's only one. And having conversations isn't really an adequate response. Where are those conversations going? When will you have additional capacity? When will we see the wait time reduced from the 20 back to the 5 or 6 that we used to have?
Minister to respond.
So, Deputy, we came within hours of the cervical screening programme actually collapsing, of laboratories not wanting to be involved in screening in Ireland anymore, of having a situation where contracts were due to expire the next week and we would have had a pause on screening. That was absolutely the priority in terms of resolving an issue. The priority issue to resolve for the HSE was that one. I want to pay tribute to them, particularly Damien McCallion, for the work that they did in ensuring that screening can continue. You're right, and I don't intend to in any way minimise the concerns and anxiety that any wait would take in relation to the result from a smear test. We are actively working night and day to try and increase capacity in this regard, and I do genuinely assure you in that regard, and I also want to assure you that there is no resourcing issue in terms of any finances that need to be made available will be made available. It is a capacity issue. I do expect that the HSE will have progress in the next few weeks in relation to additional capacity, but this is going to take some time to work through this. The encouraging thing, Lascia and Corla, and I think it is important that even after all of the very important issues that were raised about cervical check, more women are now using the programme than before. Women who hadn't engaged with the programme before are engaging in the programme before, so we are seeing some good come out of a very difficult situation, and perhaps women who hadn't signed up for the programme before are now getting their smears.
Next question.